Woodland Cemetery was founded in 1841. It's the 5th oldest garden cemetery in the country. Mount Auburn, just outside the west boundary of Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts, was the first garden cemetery. And garden cemeteries, before the movement, you were buried in your backyard, or you were buried in a church cemetery lot. But when people started accumulating into cities, and they would have these church lots, they filled up quickly as the cities were growing. And that's what happened to Dayton. Dayton had 2 cemeteries. And the city kept growing, and it was growing quickly. And the mayor at the time, his name was John Van Cleve, who was the first-born male child of Dayton. He decided that Dayton needed a cemetery, a community cemetery, far outside the city limits. And in his mind, he could not envision that the city would ever grow and encompass this cemetery. This was way out in the country to them. But he was also a very well-known botanist. And so when he came looking for a piece of land outside the city, he was impressed with this piece of land. The original cemetery was 40 acres. He bought it from a man named Augustus George. And he and 49 other men in the city of Dayton that were prominent early families formed the Woodland Association in July of 1841. I've learned that a man named Robert Edgar, and there's an Edgar Avenue up here off of Wayne Avenue, and Robert Edgar was an early family and a successful man, and he owned at that intersection where Wilmington and Wayne and Stewart and Edgar Avenue all come together. I believe his house was that house that's on that tip. And he had that farm, and he owned all the way down Wayne Avenue. And he owned the land where Woodland Cemetery is. And his daughters, Jane, married a man named Augustus George. And for their wedding present, he built them the house that is now Schlinson Moore Funeral Home. And then the house next to it, which is Westbrook Funeral Home, was built for his other daughter as a wedding present, and I think her name is Margaret, and the street right along it is Margaret Street. Augustus George was the man who sold John Van Cleve the piece of land. The chapel and administration buildings were the first real improvement done to the cemetery. They were built in 1887. They're made out of limestone. Now the light color stone is a local or Ohio limestone. The brown stone is from the upper regions of Lake Superior. It's called Lake Superior limestone. Makes sense. But it's the brownstone. That the brownstones in New York and along the East Coast, all the apartment buildings and stuff, you'll hear about the brownstones. And this is the stone. This is why they call it that. And in 1904, the Henry C. Lau family was an early Dayton wealthy business family. They commissioned the Tiffany windows. All the windows are Tiffany. The front window is a large Tiffany. It's very unusual because large windows, stained glass windows of any kind, but especially Tiffany's, are almost never signed. And they almost never have script. And this one has both. They rest in thy peace and wait to a joyful resurrection. Now the side windows are also Tiffany, and there's a story about the first one when you walk in the door to the left was stolen about 35 years, well, about 36 years ago now. And we got it back about a year ago. A gentleman come driving through the cemetery, stopped his car, got out and looked and left, and come back a little later and said, I have something that belongs, I think I've got something that belongs to you. He had it removed from his house and brought back to us. It did have some damage. We had it repaired and had it reinstalled. It is back in its spot now since August. So we were very happy. I said, I wonder if he knew it was a Tiffany when he offered it back. Now the floor is made of little tiles. They believe they're rookwood from Cincinnati. It's a very collectible. It's the Woodland house, or the manor house. The original was built in 1880, and then it was rebuilt again, and in 1930 this one was built with the bricks from the second house. The big tree here, right beside or behind the house, is the ginkgo tree. It's the first ginkgo tree that was ever planted in North America. It was brought here by John C. Klein, who was the superintendent at the time, and he was actually superintendent here for more than 50 years, 53 years I think it was. We have at one point had 9 state champion trees. The stone Swiss pine, it's a state champion. They usually are about half that height, so that's a very healthy one. The next state champion is this, it's a softer magnolia, and in May, early June, these are just beautiful magnolia trees. So that is the state champion tree. The next state champion tree is this one right by the road, which is the bird's nest spruce. One of my favorite trees. I think it's just wonderful. That is one tree. All those trunks are come out of one root.
1968. It's one of the largest in the country. We had the first crematory in Ohio, and it's got 15 different types of marble in it, and all of the windows in it are Tiffany, and they're all about themes in a poem, so you need to really look at them. They're beautiful.
The focal point of the chapel in the mausoleum is the Messiah. The words and the inspirations for this window come from the 19th chapter of the book of Revelations.
Charles and Virginia Kettering are in there. They have their own private room. If you go in and go to the left and then go down the first little aisle, they're back in there and you can see where they are. Who knows what Charles Kettering did?
Invented the starter.
Invented the starter. Him and Colonel Deed started Delco. What else did he do? He invented fast-drying car paint. And Charles was the one that helped when John Patterson bought NCR, started NCR. Charles is the one that electrified the cash register, okay?
Our first famous person is Irma Bombeck. And the only memorial with her name on it is this one that the cemetery put up. She's buried right behind this rock to the right. And that is the only place her name is right here. Now this stone was the stone or the boulder from her neighbor's yard, and she loved this boulder. And she would sit on it and do her reading and her writing and her meditation. This was in commemoration of, I think, Dayton's anniversary, and there were 3 of these made that I know of. I'm thinking I've heard there were 5, but I only know where 3 are. There's one down at the Engineers Club, one here, and one at the airport. William Huffman was a businessman. The family was very industrious, very early family, Dayton. And Williams, they were always in business. His grandson actually bought the Davis sewing machine factory from upstate New York and brought the factory, the business, and 50 of its families here to Dayton. And in order to find them a place to live, he sold them houses. He became a real estate agent, sold them houses, and in order to provide the houses, he became a contractor and built the houses. And this is the historic Huffman District. Beautiful tour at Christmas. If you ever get the opportunity to take the tour at Christmas, it is gorgeous. So this family, it was very successful, the sewing machine factory. They actually had several patents, and they actually improved the sewing machine, because before it was always a bottom feeder, had to be threaded from below, and they made it a top feeding machine so that I would be able to use one. So that company kind of, for a couple generations, it morphed into the Huffman Manufacturing Company, and they manufactured some of the first modern conveniences for the housewife here in Dayton, appliances. And then after a couple generations, that morphed into the Huffy Bicycle Company. So we all know about the Huffy Bicycle Company. And coming down the hill, you can see the death mask on the side of his monument. That when they would die, they would make actual plaster casts of their faces, and there's a profile of his death mask.